I'm Brent Sopel, former Stanley Cup champion with the Chicago Blackhawks. School was a nightmare for me. It was literally the last place I wanted to be. The only good thing for me is that at my school, there was an outdoor rink. Hockey was everything. Going to school, going to class. I could only focus on recess, when you got out for 15 minutes to play, lunchtime, and after school. Everything else was a struggle, and I never knew why. Nobody asked any questions. I always got labeled as the dumb athlete. I was in 9th grade English class, and I was asked to read. I panicked in my mind. I'm like, how can I get out of this? What do I do? Just started sweating. I was guessing at words, and you hear kids laughing and snickering and trying to figure out what I'm reading or what is going on. Still plays in my head, this many years later. I avoided everything I had to do with reading and writing. I've been using that term to myself, hiding behind my stick. I've kept this obviously very tight-lipped. There's very few people that know that I have these learning disorders and challenges on a daily basis. When my daughter was struggling, I think I really noticed things around kindergarten, grade 1. We ended up going and getting her tested. The results were astounding because every answer was me. I was so blown away that there's a name for something. And it took 34 odd years for me to kind of figure that out and understand that there is something else that is going on other than me being just dumb or stupid.
My son Keaton, who was diagnosed with these learning disabilities, I talked about him a lot and his difficulty in school and missing school and having anxiety and self-esteem issues. So I would talk to you about issues about my own son and issues along those lines. And you were so intuitive about what he was going through, but you never really told me what you were going through.
It's one of those feelings, for whatever reason, that whoever it's from or whoever's struggling, that's why I connect with a lot of people. When you struggle as long as you do, as much as you do, you pick up a lot of things.
It was during the Stanley Cup playoffs of 2010. It was a Saturday morning, and I look out my window about 8 or 8:15, and I see Brent Sopel sort of lumbering up my walk. I get to the door and I open it up, and Brent held this pennant out for me that he had signed by every single member of the Chicago Blackhawks 2010 Stanley Cup team the night before. He was bringing it to me and saying, I got a gift for Keaton. And what it meant to me years later was Brent was recognizing the difficulty and struggles my son had that mirrored his struggles and was coming to say, I'm there for you.
Winning a Stanley Cup was a childhood dream. I had won it, probably millions of times on the outdoor rink. To finally actually win it, nobody will ever be able to take that away from me. As an individual, as a person, outside of the game of hockey, I was still struggling, and nobody knew that. My career slowly coming to an end, and then walking into the real world. I knew the real world was out there calling my name. I was a hockey player that retired now that has to enter the real world with these learning disorders that nobody knows.
He would acknowledge to me, I'm almost at my breaking point, Mike. I've never felt more unsure of what I'm doing. I never felt more inept.
I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to talk to. I was a lost soul. And the only way I felt good was to consume alcohol. I didn't like who I was. I didn't know why. I always come back to on an island by myself. It was, some family and friends that, sat me down and said, here, this is what's going to happen. And I went and got treatment.
And I think his going to rehab had such an awakening in him. And he said to me, I know what I got to do. I know who I have to apologize to. And then he knew that he had to go back and help so that nobody else went through this type of an experience that he did.
I've been doing some broadcasting, which is awesome. I have a great time doing it. I don't have to read or write. I can't read off a teleprompter, but it's a very, very slow process. I've teamed up with a group in Illinois where I'm hosting a skate. I think we have about 65 kids that are dyslexic. I'm going to interact with them and be there for them and be their support and let them understand that they're not alone. I'm not the only one. I've never thought I was the only one that had these issues, but I don't want another kid to go through the things that my daughter had to, that I had to for so many years. And same with the parents. I've got a daughter that has it, and I know what it feels like, and I still live in life in fear. And if I can help one kid then to two kids so they don't live that way, smile on their face brings a smile to my face. I had the worst self-esteem my whole life. Here's a small portion of my life playing hockey growing up, but then there's a big thing over here where I gotta spend all my days at school. What can you do to help your kids? First off, find that one thing they enjoy. If they've got that self-confidence in who they are, they're gonna make it. I couldn't stand going to school. I hated every second of school. There's only one place in the world where I felt comfortable, and that was on the ice. Because I knew nobody asked me to read something, nobody asked to spell anything. I want to do what I can to help these kids and raise that awareness, help teachers to understand what that is, that he or she might not be that class clown. They're hiding behind something. We all learn in different ways. It doesn't make them less smart than somebody else. I will continue to try and help out and advocate, and whatever that is, I'm looking forward to that next chapter and helping anybody out I can.